We got some breaking news, though, Krystal. I just want to inform you.
Yeah,
it just came across the wire that the U.S. will be banning imports of Russian oil. So,
wow.
Yeah, just literally broke just the second.
Really relevant. Is that from Biden or
this is this is being leaked out to the White House press corps from Bloomberg. Jennifer Jacobs, scoop: U.S. to ban Russian imports. White House announcement as soon as today.
Wow.
So that's going to have a massive impact on what we're about to talk about.
Yes. So yesterday, gas prices hit an all-time high at $4.06 for a national average. Let's go ahead and put the numbers up on the screen. This morning, it has already spiked again. What are we up to now, Saagar? 417?
Yeah, it looks like a 417 in terms of the gas price here.
This morning. So we've never seen this before.
Right.
And obviously, looking at this map, so the red states are the places where it's highest. West Coast, Alaska, California, and Hawaii. Also, the Northeast has high prices, and Illinois apparently. And then you have this swath down the middle where the prices are lower. But when you're talking about lower, you're still talking about $3.75 in places like Texas and Oklahoma. So this is this is just brutal. There's no way to spin it.
Yep.
It's absolutely devastating to working class people. Not only, obviously, are they the ones who have limited means, whose pocketbooks and wages have already been depleted by inflation. By the way, we're supposed to get new inflation numbers out this week. But they're also the people who tend to have to live a ways away from where they work.
That's
so
right.
They're also most dependent on their cars because you can't afford oftentimes to live in the city where your job actually is. And our public transit is total shit. So people are reliant. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah,
so people are having to drive miles and miles and miles from wherever their home is because they're priced out of the neighborhood where the jobs actually are. And so this hits the working class extremely, extremely hard. Let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen because it gives you a little bit of the overall economic picture. Wall Street is starting to really downgrade their forecasts of where the S&P 500 and the stock market is going to end up at the end of this year as oil prices surge. And so to give you the sort of big picture, you had huge stock market declines yesterday. Dow Jones Industrial Average lost about 800 points. You had the S&P 500 declined close to 3% in one day, falling deeper into correction territory. You had the NASDAQ losing 3.6%. The NASDAQ now sits in bear market territory, more than 20% from its all-time close. You have Brent crude, which of course is like the thing that everybody always looks at, spiking to $139.13 per barrel. That's its highest amount since July 2008. That's before, the Russian oil ban. And you also have, on top of all of this, you have a Fed that is still, because inflation is very high, expecting to lift rates.
Yep.
And that is coming very soon. So you've got, good jobs numbers last week, but wages decimated by inflation, further decimated specifically by gas prices. You have a stock market that is collapsing due to oil prices increasing and geopolitical instability, and also the Fed still planning to raise rates because of that inflation. And it is a very, very dire picture. On the Russian oil ban front, yesterday, there's a broad bipartisan consensus around this, not only among politicians, but also among Americans who really want to stand with the Ukrainians, really want to feel like we're doing something. And so basically anything short of actually troops on the ground, Americans are overwhelmingly in a bipartisan fashion in favor of. And that goes for banning Russian oil. Now, will that support continue when it hits their pocketbook?
Yeah,
and
I don't
gas
think
prices
there's been a lot of consideration.
Continue to go up. And I do want to say, even when you ask people, okay, if this means that gas prices go up, are you still in favor of it? They still are. But the abstract theoretical possibility is very different than, oh, I can't make rent and I can't fill up my gas tank and I can't put food on the table. So the fact that we are going forward with this Russian oil ban is a massively huge consequential deal. You had Democrats in the House yesterday kind of putting pressure on the Biden administration that has been more resistant to doing the oil ban because they're concerned about some of these follow-on consequences, which is why they're reaching out to Venezuela, why they're reaching out to, they're continuing to negotiate on the Iran deal, and they're reaching out to reportedly Saudi, which of course is way worse humanitarian abuser than Russia is at the moment. But they know that gas prices are going to be a massive problem for them politically and possible driver of domestic instability. But Democrats in the House kind of forced their hand on this, and now we see that they are, in fact, caving and banning Russian oil.
This is breaking, obviously, and so how monumental this is really hard to overstate. I mean, in terms of the amount of crude that we actually get from the Russians, it's not necessarily that high. Estimates range from 3 to 10%. I was reading, though, yesterday that the island of Hawaii is going to get decimated by this. About 25% at worst of times of their gas actually does come from Russia. And they have high prices anyway. I think the average price there, you can check on the map, it's like $4.70 already a gallon. Now, you mentioned the Europeans.
$4.72.
Yep, there you go. Wow, look at me. Let's go ahead and put this next one up there on the screen in terms of the German chancellor. So this is also very important around how the EU is going to handle this, because as I mentioned there yesterday, the European Union and China actually import the vast majority of Russia's crude oil. So that's where it would have the biggest impact in terms of a ban. Germany, highly reliant on Russian energy, especially gas, natural gas, and as well as oil, is pushing back on the idea of an import ban. However, I would remind you that Germany was one of the initial people to push back on kicking Russia off of SWIFT. But as the Western allies increasingly pressured them and more, it came to a deal where the Germans actually acquiesced and not only killed Nord Stream 2, but kicked Russia out of that SWIFT, including the central bank sanctions and more. This is another way, too, where the bipartisan hawkishness in Washington, in Congress, basically forced President Biden's hand. There was reporting we were both reading last night that the president was, well, he was on the edge on whether the Russian oil ban actually made any sense, but Congress was about to pass its own law, which would force his hand and probably would have a veto-proof majority. Now, this may be unpopular for me to say, but I think we should all step back and consider the consequences of this. Number one, is everyone really prepared to pay $5 a gallon for gas? I just checked. The average tank size in the United States is somewhere between 12 and 15 gallons. So right now, it is costing, on average, to fully fill your tank between $50 to $60. That's a lot of money, considering how much you're driving, depending on that, obviously. Then let's kick it up to $5. So you're really telling me that you're willing to pay 60 to 65 gallons on average in this country? This excludes California, where there are already many places where their gas prices already up to $6. We're talking about a massive tax. I mentioned yesterday, California, 12% of the U.S. population lives there. They have an average gas price right now of $5.40 a gallon.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see $6.50, $7 out there and a national price average of $5.50, that's crazy town. And look, go ahead and throw this next one up there. Look at what's happening over in Europe. They're currently trading at $500 a barrel in terms of the equivalent. This is natural gas, but this matters because it comes down to heating. Now, luckily, it's getting a little bit warmer here and the heating prices aren't going to be the same, but these things have a long-standing impact in the way that we not only heat our houses, but produce energy for natural gas-fired power plants. A huge amount of energy for the United States comes from that in terms of the data that I've looked at. There are long-standing, massive economic consequences. And you laid out the picture perfectly, which is it's not just gas, and my whole monologue is on this. We have record-high food prices. The developing world is going to see double-digit food inflation. This is the stuff of riots and destabilization.
Bread prices directly related to the likelihood of riots and domestic instability.
There you go. We all know this. I mean, we are truly entering a period not just of the 1970s, which I'm drawing an analogy to, of the 1910s, of like the crazy recession of the silver times in 1920. I cannot overstate this. The other thing from a grand strategic point of view, let's think about it this way. If Russia invades a NATO ally now, what do we have left short of war? I mean, look, we were going to go to war anyway whenever it came to NATO, but let's say whenever it came to some other country, which is around then.
Moldova's not NATO, right?
I think it might actually be. Or maybe I'm thinking Montenegro. I forget. Okay, anyway, one of those countries, non-NATO country, what do we have left in our arsenal? We have nothing. I mean, oil ban is about as big as it gets. We've sanctioned their central bank. We've effectively canceled them through our sanctions, through the entire global financial system. Oil was the last tool in our arsenal. So we have now thrown the full playbook at Russia, and we are all going to suffer deep consequences. I saw somebody jokingly say online yesterday, Joe Biden is making the great mistake that many presidents have made, letting foreign affairs affect the comfort of Americans. And unfortunately, I do think that that is true, which is that, look, even my own friends, the people who are not political, everybody's got a story of watching the gas price in the neighborhood go up 20 cents a day.
Yeah.
And this is getting deeply hurt on the pocketbook level and also discretionary spending. You know, a lot of small businesses just went through the ringer and they are depending on discretionary spending being high. But if food, rent, and gas are going to suck up, 65, 70% of your paycheck, what are you going to do? You got to sit at home and do nothing, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And I also have to layer on top of this, Biden is like, everybody needs to go back to work in the office. It's like, we can't afford to get there.
Yeah, how are people supposed to go?
I mean,
that's more of a white collar problem, but still, I mean, it's bad.
Exactly. So, and I mean, there's also, I want to talk a little bit more about Germany because I think this is really important because they're not just saying like, we're not team players here and we don't want to go along with what you guys are all doing. Germany's chancellor said, Europe has deliberately exempted energy supplies from Russia from sanctions. Supplying Europe with energy for heat generation, mobility, electricity supply, and industry cannot be secured in any other way at the moment.
Yeah.
He's saying we literally can't do it. It is therefore of essential importance for the provision of public services and the daily lives of our citizens. So they're saying, guys, we cannot do this. Like, maybe we made mistakes in the past of being too dependent on Russia, but we are where we are, and we have no way to make up this supply. I saw an estimate that they would have to reduce their consumption. Europe would have to cut demand by as much as 15% to make it through the next winter in the event of a full cutoff of Russian supply. Okay, that's a huge chunk, 15%. And listen, we may just be coming out of winter right now and feel like winter's a long way off, but it will be here before you know it. Their natural gas prices in Europe today, right now, are 14 times what ours are here. If any of you use natural gas in your homes, you already know how expensive it is. So 14 times the price. This is hugely consequential. And so it's going to hurt European people, working class people. It's going to hurt American working class people. It's going to devastate Russia, including their ordinary citizens who are already being hit hard by these sanctions. And it's not clear at all that is a smart tactical play. In fact, part of what we've been talking about is the way that these aggressive moves, which remember, Russia considers to be acts of war.
At least rhetorically, and has said that.
Said that, and I think at this point we should all listen very closely to what they are saying.
True.
That these things can further escalate the situation because your opponent always gets a say in what the next move is and in how they respond to our actions here. So I know that we are not in the majority sentiment of the country, but I think this is a foolish move. I think it is a disaster for us. I think it's disaster for the world. I think it's disaster for Russia. And I think it only makes it more likely that this situation is going to escalate beyond Ukraine.
Yeah, I think it's very possible that, in terms of the escalation, but in terms of domestic impact, I don't think we can underestimate what it means to have a country with $5.50 average gas price. That's just crazy. I mean, and let's say it hits 6. I just checked last year, the number was 8%. I said at any time it's between 3 and 10%. Do we have any guarantees about who's going to replace all that gas? I mean, as we pointed out, we don't necessarily have the refining capacity, and we could drill right now. It takes anywhere between 6 and 18 months in order to get that stuff up. So what's going to happen in the meantime? I mean, are the Venezuelans going to pump? I wouldn't if I were them. They're going to demand sanctions relief, which, look at our Congress. You think they're going to allow that to happen? Same whenever it comes to the Saudis. I mean, the Saudis are giggling in Riyadh because they love the fact that, we punished them over the Khashoggi killing and diplomatically isolated them. And they've been holding back for a long time intentionally in order to screw us. They want nothing more than to see Biden suffer domestically. So there's no guarantee we're going to be able to replace that. That's, somewhere around 8% on average of our national crude oil, especially when we're already in a crisis like this one. I would just say, even if you do support this and defunding the Russian war machine, number one, I do think that we should have held it back for something that could have come in the future, something of the most maximalist action. And then number two, I just do not think anybody is considering the major domestic ramifications of this. It seemed like a good idea in 2002 to pass the Patriot Act and do all kinds of stuff when there was a real mania in the air. And look how it all turned out for everybody. I know it's not exactly one-to-one, but it just goes to show you that in these times of, fast-moving and emotional consideration, there needs to be people who pump the brakes. Our system of government is supposed to be for that. And this is one of the reasons I'm so annoyed with Congress, which is foreign affairs is supposed to be up to the president. And Congress is forcing President Biden's hand on this.
And you also, and this is what I'm looking at in my monologue, you have a media that primes the pump for people to push for more, to push for the most escalatory behavior, the most hawkish behavior. There's never anyone, you won't hear anyone on cable news saying, here's how this is gonna play out, and here's why this is a bad idea, and here's why we should be more reticent of going to all-out economic warfare, which is what these moves really constitute. So this is a huge deal, guys, and it's going to completely reshape our politics and global politics. There's just no other way to say it.
That's it.
Hey, guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.